Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Come election season, and you would find leaders of all political parties making promises that make you think that you're going just to step in a utopia where there's no pain, where life is excellent quality of life. And not only quality of life is excellent, it is possibly either free or absolutely cheap. These umpteen promises are very often impractical, and some of them can be injurious to the economic health of the people. But all these promises are couched in a language that is so sugary sweet that the people are taken in. Despite hundreds of years of experience of dealing with these politicians, whose sole purpose is to promote themselves, the common citizenry is deluded into thinking that these political leaders are their best guardians. And that is because of the promises that they make. Same is happening in Canada. It happens everywhere. And if you look at the promises, if on an average, if a candidate makes 100 promises, at least 70 would not be kept. And the 30 out of that 20, they'll be introduced, but they will not pass through the system of the parliament. And the balance 10%, if they are passed, you would find that they make matters worse. The most classic example is when Justin Trudeau came into power and he said the balance of budget would be there. And do you know that we are crossing $1 trillion worth of public debt? And that is not only here, that's all over the world. So this time, all the political parties are making promises, and you must have read them. But some promises did intrigue me, especially by the conservatives and the liberals as well. Now, Trudeau made a statement that Canada has lost 10 years under Conservative Party. Keeps on going back to 15 years back. So he says we have to fight the climate change. And to fight the climate change, he imposed carbon tax. And then he blames the Conservative Party that still we have not been able to change the climate, as if he assumes that any person sitting in Ottawa in the prime minister's seat is a virtual god and can say, like King Canute, King Canute's story, he's told the ocean, waves don't come further, and the waves continue to come. So King Canute told his courtiers, look, I can't control the waves. You are always saying I'm omnipotent. But here, they still think that they can control the waves and control the climate change, which is not possible. Now look at the reality. He says that in the Harper era, we were having worse climate change, and now it's becoming better. And since 2015, they have been doing their best. They are increasing taxes. Now, what's the actuality? Between 2006 and 2015, when Harper was the prime minister, the carbon emissions decreased 730 million tons. They were 730 million tons, and they decreased to 723 million tons. 7 million tons decrease in a period of 9 years. Now, comparison to liberal government, we have seen that they have grown from 716 million tons to 723 million tons. So there was a fall on the one side during Harper by 9 million tons, and now there's an increase of 7 million tons. 9 plus 7, 16 million tons difference. And yet the Prime Minister is blaming former Prime Minister. Absolutely false. But who remembers the figures? Maybe some researcher, maybe some economist. Do you think the public is going to listen to that? Despite the fact that they are permanently telling lies, indulging in hoaxes. Look at NTV. And I took just one example of what Trudeau is recommending. If I go through the list, it may take me at least 60 hours continuously to show the hollowness of the problems of the party. And NDP, Jagmeet, he comes out with a blueprint, universal pharmacare, dental care, $20 minimum wage, cancellation of student debt. It's a 115-page document. And then he says 1% tax on households, topping $10 million, and 15% tax on large companies that enjoyed profit during COVID 19. Now, from where would the money come for the universal pharmacare, dental care? Already $1.3 trillion debt. So, do we want to convert Canada into Somalia or Ethiopia or Italy? Then he says that he'll impose taxes, 15% tax on the large corporates. What would happen? Those companies would have two options. Either they shut out their employees, and for the small businesses, restaurants, shops, who employ people, $20 minimum wage, while in some provinces here it's still $8. What would they do? Student debt goes into millions of dollars. Who will pay for that? Taxpayer. So one way he'll take it, the other way he'll give it. But the whole thing is fraught with an economic disaster. Whole thing. Actually, I'm reminded when NDP was in power in Ontario under Bob Rae, and Ontario was devastated. So Jagmeet's promises of NDP are an unmitigated disaster. But don't think that I'm condemning these only. Look at one promise made by Arano 2, absolutely ridiculous promise. He said in his statement when he released 160-page document, which includes billions of dollars of promised spending, some financial aid for the small businesses, boosting the growth rate of the health transfer to the cities, good enough. But he said one thing which amazed me. He rejected the National Universal Care System, child care system, which is recommended by the liberals. But he said, well, I'll give the child care tax credit for the lower income families. Good. But here comes the stupidity. He says that Conservative Party, in case it comes into power, will have a trade deal with Australia, New Zealand, and UK. And this is a promise which has puzzled a number of economists. And I was shocked when I read this. Now, Stephen Harper, the last Conservative Prime Minister, was big on doing trade deals. He completed agreements with South Korea, Colombia, Jordan, initiated talks with the European Union, and had an elusive compact with India, one of the Asia's largest growing economies. O'Toole was cabinet minister in Harper's government, and he's less ambitious. But his statement that he'll have a Kenzuk agreement, free trade and investment between the four nations, is something beyond comprehension. The idea is on because the gains are so small and marginal. And as a matter of fact, negotiations would be much more troublesome than they appear at the first glance. New Zealand, for example, is a big dairy exporter. Now, if it's a dairy exporter, Canada itself is very good in dairy and is exporting. So, how would two dairy exporters, instead of competing, collaborate? I fail to understand. Now, since it's going to be a free trade, New Zealand will start investing or sending the product in Canada, and possibly they'll start subsidizing the exports, thereby making their milk, cheese, and milk products cheaper. The result, the dairy industry, which employs 32 million people, would be devastated. 32 million families, imagine it. And what would happen? The Canadian highly protected dairy market would be open to New Zealand, destruction of the property, downsizing the economy, rampant unemployment. Did he not think what the consequence of this agreement is going to be? So, same thing happens with Australia when it comes to wine. Now, Canadian ice wine is well known the world over. But he says, no, we'll give a free way to the Australian wines. I love Australian Shiraz, I don't deny it. I know, like that Cabernet. But then letting them come in and destroying the vineyards of Niagara is an economic disaster. As a matter of fact, I happened to have a talk with Keith Head, the economics professor, who's an expert in the interstate, and he says it's redundant, especially when already we have an agreement called CPTPP, Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement on Trans-Pacific Partnership, which came into effect in December 2018. And Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are members of that. Now, after UK left European Union, Canada and UK negotiated an agreement that has the same parameters which were there in the Canada US EU deal negotiated by Harper. Now, UK is trying to garner support to join this comprehensive agreement of 11 countries. And if he is successful, Kansas would continue to exist as a part of the larger group. And that is the most comprehensive trade agreement ever signed in the history of the world. So why is this leader of Conservative Party intent upon projecting something which only shows his short vision, his economic myopia, and his inability to lead the country? Increasing Canada's free trade network around the world to diversify market, to pursue all trade agreements. That was the doctrine Harper adopted. But he also said at that time, if I remember very correctly, that free trade can't be an end goal in itself. It has to be strategically selective with the people we are comfortable with. You can't have a free trade agreement with China. They'll dump everything in your country at prices you can't imagine. Can you believe I, I received an email that they are willing to give the mobility scooters at 10 cents. 10 cents, which here costs $6,000. So you cannot promote free trade for the sake of free trade, but you've got to believe in engaging international markets to create Canadian jobs, increase investment, and also have strategic partnerships. With the rise of China, Canada has a moral duty to stand along the democratic nations. I agree. Okay? And Conservative Party has a strong track record on trade and understands the free trade drivers, Canadian jobs. But then what is O'Toole talking about? And while there are points in the platform that pledge or engage in rest of the nations, such as Indo-Pacific or Africa, there are no pledges that explicitly deal further deals from cancel. Canada, New Zealand, Australia. That's already there in CPTT. So the critical question is how far are they proposing cancel to go? The matter is important since even the labor mobility would be have a potential and Kensington deal could add more value beyond current agreements. No, it's not possible. In 20 and look at the total trade we have. In 2020 last year, 3.8% of the Canadian exports went to UK, 0.4 went to Australia, 0.1 to New Zealand. Now, if at the same time he had said he wants to finalize a free trade deal, do you know, all of a sudden, the pulses agreement that we have with India would have resulted in an export of $300 billion only of pulses. But that he has not talked about. So, as a matter of fact, you can have an easy trade agreement that won't really do much. But the better is the big prize is India. And that's not only my opinion. Even Fraser Institute says he should have talked about that. So that's one. But then he came up with a very sensible program as well. He said he'll have GST holiday. Now, if you remember, Harper had promised to reduce GST from 7% to 5%. And people said it's cheating, but he did decrease it within a period of 6 months of coming into power. Now, O'Toole has promised to make a GST holiday in December if he's elected. But his reason is wrong. It's a good idea. Cutting the GST would make not much difference for the family. It would not beat inflation. What you need is a GST holiday for 1 year, maybe more. Because what will happen when you have a GST holiday? Consumers would have extra money and they go and spend more. When they spend more, there'll be more production. So that will have a cyclical effect and a spiraling effect continuously both ways. So there'll be more employment, more opportunities, more economic development. And that's an excellent idea. Now, all parties in the election promise that if they're elected, they'll continue to borrow and spend to get the economy back on the feet. But the Liberal stimulus plan to continue to give cash transfers to seniors, displaced persons, and businesses is stupid again. Freebies are never going to promote the economy. What you need is to give incentives so people spend. But when you give freebies, they spend all right, but they are not contributing productively. Problem with this approach of liberals is that they are saving, their freebies are saving for cash payments and not spending them. Household saving is running today $150 billion than it was last year. Can you believe it? $150 billion people are not spending. If they spend that money, how much employment would be generated? Because when they buy more, companies would have to produce more. And if they start spending, now GST, when you do it, you are giving money to the family, but it's given on the condition that they spend. If they don't spend, the GST holiday has no meaning. So GST cut would coax the customer back to the stores, unlock some of the extraordinary level of personal saving accumulated during this 1 year. A recession era sale tax reduction is not a new idea, no, let me tell you. And it's not only a electoral gimmick. The UK government made a reduction in sale tax a key part in 2008 2009. And do you know, it was a tremendous success. European governments, many European governments like France, Germany, Austria, they have already implemented sale tax reduction. So if Canada does it, it will be great. I look at what happened even in Canada in 2006. Saskatchewan reduced the sale tax by 2%. The prices of all the tax goods and services fell immediately by 2%. And the economy boomed. So if this suggestion is implemented, government will lose $2.5 billion. That's true. In the tax holiday, 2.5. But taking advantage of the tax break, consumer would purchase big ticket items. And for better or worse, the government's planned deficit compared to the present one, 166.7 billion would be added by 2.4 billion, 2.5 billion. But the production would be 600 billion. That's the difference. So the economy today is below potential. And right now, spending is good for the recovery. So tool has come up with certain suggestions. Some are good, some are bad, and some are horrible. This is as far as the tool is concerned. It's, some are on right, some are absolutely fit to be thrown in the waste paper. Trudeau's, I could not find a single one worth considering, nor could I find that of NDP. Choice would be for the voters to exercise. But be sure most of the promises, I hope, and if the history is guide, any guide to that, we find the liberals have never made their commitments and lived up to them. Trudeau made the commitment of balanced budget. The result you have seen. Paul Martin made 144 promises, fulfilled four of them. What's the record? What we need is sensible promises which are implementable and which help the country rather than make those promises that paint a rosy picture but lead the country down the shit creek. The sooner the electorate understands it, the better it would be. Thank you.